This is a Midrash on the Parshat Bamidbar and special for the holiday of Shavuot, entitled The Three Imperatives for Learning and Teaching Torah. So the Midrash makes an unusual statement. I'll read it in Hebrew. It says, B'shlosha dvarim nitna haTorah, be'esh, b'mayim, u'b'midbar. And I'm going to give you a non-literal but very precise definition, and that is that the three preconditions needed for the successful transmission or absorption of Torah are fire, water, and the desert. So let's start with the easiest one, water. We understand that just like water is essential for human survival, so is the Torah. And that really means that in order to teach or to receive Torah, you have to really believe that the essential religious experience of Judaism is learning Torah. Of course, this is most dramatically conveyed by the famous story in Talmud Brachot, where Rabbi Akiva was asked why he continues teaching Torah in public when there was a decree by the Romans that anybody would be put to death for teaching Torah. And he gives an analogy which basically says that for a Jew to be without Torah is like a fish out of water. The next criteria that the Midrash lists is the desert, which means humility. If you think back, the Torah was given in a place which was the epitome of a harsh, barren, no man's land. And the point is that you have to have humility to teach Torah and to receive Torah. To receive Torah, you have to embrace the vastness of what you don't know. You have to be willing to learn from anyone, perhaps someone many years younger than you, and you have to be willing to go to a place that perhaps you may have previously considered out of your comfort zone. And the commentator Eitz Yosef adds that even for the one conveying Torah, you need the humility to approach this whole situation as I am going to gain from my students. I can learn from everyone, and therefore, although I am technically teaching them, I'm really learning. And if you can achieve that, then it can be a truly transformational experience. Finally, the very first criteria the Midrash mentioned was fire. And the Midrash mentions the verse describing the giving the Torah, and it talked about the smoke rose like the smoke of a furnace. The whole mountain trembled violently. My father, Rav Meir Aryeh Mosesson Olav Shalom, saw this as a very foreboding sign. He saw this as a message that when you're learning Torah, it comes with responsibility. And we know, tragically, whenever the Jewish values were left behind in Jewish history, there were tragic consequences. So, although you get to reach great spiritual heights, there's also a responsibility here. The fiery furnace can sometimes be quite literal. And of course, fire can also symbolize anti-Semitism, and it's reminiscent of the question that converts are asked: do you really want to be part of the Jewish people and subject yourself to the vulnerability of anti-Semitism? Furthermore, the Talmud in Gemara Shabbos actually says that the very word Mount Sinai, Har Sinai, comes from a word that sounds very much the same, sinah, even though it's spelled differently, with a sin instead of a samach, but it means hatred. In other words, the Gemara is saying the hatred of the Jewish people started at the very same time that we got the Torah. Perhaps as the moral conscience of the world, we have a very inconvenient message telling people that you can't actually do what you want. There are consequences to your actions in this world and the next world. And this was something that Hitler, Yimach Shemo, actually wrote about in his famous book, Mein Kampf, where he railed against the conscience as being a Jewish invention. I would also like to draw from another Midrashic source talking about the very first time that fire came into man's possession. As you know, man, Adam and Chava, were created on Friday, the very first week of creation. And unfortunately, by Shabbat, they were already expelled from the Garden of Eden. So that Friday night, there was still light in the world because of the primordial light. But by Saturday night, God had already decided to take that primordial light and store it away for the world to come, which meant that that first Saturday night of existence for Adam and Chava, they were about to be plunged into darkness. And it was very traumatic for them. So God gave them a gift. He gave them 2 flintstones that they could rub together and make fire. That's why actually we make Havdalah, the Havdalah ceremony on Motzei Shabbat, thanking God for the fire that we got on Saturday night. But I'd like to take this idea and say perhaps this could be another reason why fire is one of the 3 criteria. Perhaps that fire represents the original source of light that mankind got in order to cope with dark, foreboding times. And like the Torah, the fire was God's gift to mankind to help us adapt and thrive in the world. The commentary of Torah makes another analogy, that you don't want to go too far away from fire because you lose its warmth. Yet if you go too close, you can be injured. And that is also true of the Torah. Perhaps the analogy is if you go too close, if you learn parts of the Torah that are too esoteric and you don't have the background for it, it could actually endanger your relationship with God. And you could end up leaving. Or there are some people who take on Jewish practices too fast all at once, and they also end up getting turned off and leaving the fold. So there is a danger of being too close, but of course if you're too far, you miss this tremendous value system that gives you light in the darkness that we've been talking about. I will end with this powerful idea that the Midrash gives. It talks about fire, water, and desert as being free to all who come into the world. So too are the words of Torah, free for all who come into the world. In other words, although there are no spiritual, intellectual endeavors in the world that can compare to Torah, the amazing thing about Torah is that there are no barriers to admission. Anyone can come, anyone can start learning. All they need is the will to start. Have a great Shabbat and a great holiday of Shavuot.